Some mountains hide in plain sight, not in distant satellite images, but behind laws, sacred taboos, and walls of stone. Even today, there are summits with no confirmed ascent, forbidden by governments and revered by people who have never left the forest beneath them. So why do satellites find mountains we still cannot reach? And what is waiting out there for anyone bold enough to try? Cerro El Cono rises like a perfect pyramid from the endless green of the Peruvian Amazon, its slopes untouched by trail or rope. The mountain's symmetry has sparked rumors of a lost civilization, but local knowledge tells a different story. For the Matzes and neighboring peoples, this peak is not a mystery to solve, but a living presence, a guardian spirit called Apu that watches over the forest. Oral tradition warns against approaching the mountain, and rituals are held from a respectful distance. In 2015, Peru created the Sierra del Divisor National Park, placing Cerro El Cono within a zone of strict protection. The park spans over 1 million hectares, sheltering uncontacted tribes whose survival depends on isolation. Here, the law is clear. Entry is absolutely prohibited without permission from CERNANP, the National Protected Areas Authority, and the consent of indigenous councils. Even scientific teams and filmmakers are barred from the slopes, not just to preserve the ecosystem, but to protect communities with no immunity to outside disease. There are no recorded ascents, no mapped routes, and no evidence of looting or excavation. The absence of trails is a shield, not an oversight. This is one of the rare places on Earth where the greatest barrier is not distance or danger, but a network of legal and spiritual boundaries. Curiosity meets its match in the rights and beliefs of people who have chosen to keep their mountain and themselves out of reach. A patch of deep green, hidden in the heart of Mozambique, first caught a scientist's eye not from the ground, but from a computer screen. In 2005, conservationist Julian Bayliss scanned Google Earth for unknown forests and noticed a dense, unbroken canopy atop Mount Mabu, an anomaly that did not match any protected area maps. Local communities had always known the mountain, but to global science, it was a blank spot. By 2008, a team of nearly 30 biologists and researchers trekked through rough tracks and days of wet hiking to reach the forest. Mount Mabu rises to around 1,750 meters, its slopes wrapped in one of Africa's largest untouched mid-altitude rainforests. The expedition found more than a dozen species new to science. Bright chameleons, rare butterflies, and frogs unlike any described before. The sense of discovery was electric. One scientist described it as stepping into a lost world, a place where evolution had quietly run its own course. Despite the digital start, reaching Mabu was anything but easy. The forest's remoteness meant no roads, no tourist infrastructure, and no guarantee of a safe return. Even now, access depends on the season, the willingness of local guides, and the stamina to cross rivers and slippery slopes. Technology opened the door, but the jungle still decides who gets in. Mount Liko rises abruptly from the Mozambican plains, its summit forest sealed off by sheer cliffs that reach up to 700 meters above the surrounding farmland. For years, the top remained a mystery, visible on satellite images as a dark green crown but out of reach for anyone without serious climbing skill. In May 2018, conservation scientist Julian Bayliss led a team of 28 researchers and elite British climbers to attempt what no one in living memory had done. The ascent was anything but routine. Climbers Jules Lines and Mike Robertson tackled a 125-meter vertical face, placing their own protection as they went. Once they reached the rim, they fixed static ropes, allowing the rest of the team to ascend with harnesses and mechanical ascenders. Each trip up the rope took over an hour. By the 7th day, rope abrasion left them with only a single line, forcing strict limits and constant vigilance. When the scientists finally hauled their gear into the summit forest, they found a world that had evolved in isolation: old growth trees, dense leaf litter, and species that may exist nowhere else. But the greatest surprise came at a spring near the center of the plateau, where they found several clay pots placed upside down beside the water source. No one from nearby communities claimed knowledge of these artifacts, and there are no stories of anyone ever climbing to the top. Baylis suspects the pots were left as ritual offerings, perhaps to ensure rain for crops below. The discovery hinted at a forgotten human visit, a single trace on a mountain otherwise defended by stone and height. On Mount Liko, the greatest barriers are not only the cliffs, but the secrets they keep. Heat, distance, and cold each build their own barriers, and for some mountains, those barriers have never truly come down. In the far north of Chad, Emi Koussi rises out of the Sahara, a shield volcano standing 3,415 meters above the sand. Getting there is not just a matter of endurance. The Tibesti region is a maze of old conflict zones and shifting military checkpoints. Travelers need special permits from the Chadian government, and even those are no guarantee. Armed groups, stray landmines, and the absence of any real infrastructure turn a desert crossing into a gamble. Scientific expeditions are rare, relying on satellite images to study the caldera from afar. For those who try the overland route, the journey means days in a 4x4 vehicle rationing water and no backup if things go wrong. This isolation takes a different form in the South Atlantic. Queen Mary's crowns Tristan de Cunha, the world's remotest inhabited island, 2,400 kilometers from Africa. There is no airport, no regular flights. Only a handful of ships make the 6 to 7 day voyage from Cape Town each year. The island's entire population once evacuated in 1961 when the volcano erupted, living as exiles in England for nearly 2 years before sailing home. Today, even visitors who secure a berth on a supply ship face a narrow window. Weather can close the tiny harbor for days, and any climb depends on local guides and the unpredictable moods of the Atlantic. For the islanders, the volcano is more than a landmark. It is a force that shapes every story, every homecoming, every cautious welcome to outsiders. Where the Sahara burns and the Atlantic isolates, Siberia freezes. Gora Pobeda stands deep in the Chersky Range in the heart of Yakutia, Russia. The nearest road is hundreds of kilometers away, and winter temperatures drop below -50 degrees Celsius. Expeditions rely on frozen rivers as seasonal highways, but thaw or early freeze can cut off access for weeks. There is no rescue service. Climbers must be entirely self-sufficient. In these conditions, a broken snowmobile or a sudden storm can mean disaster. The cold is not just a climate. It is an adversary, shaping every decision, every step, and every memory of those who have tried to reach this frozen giant. Mount Paektu rises on the border between China and North Korea, its broad caldera lake filling the sky with cloud and legend. In Korean mythology, Paektu is the birthplace of the nation, a sacred summit where gods descended to earth. For North Korea, the mountain is more than a volcano. It is the cradle of the ruling Kim family, woven into tales of revolutionary struggle and miraculous births. Official guides recount that Kim Jong-il was born here in 1942, beneath a new star and double rainbows, even as Soviet records quietly list his birthplace as Vyatskoye, deep in Russia's far east. On the Chinese side, tourists and scientists can reach the rim by road, gazing down into Heaven Lake. But the North Korean slopes are fenced off by more than border posts. Access is tightly choreographed, limited to state-sanctioned tours and rare scientific visits. Even international volcanologists, allowed in after a series of earthquakes in the early 2000s, found their instruments watched and their data filtered. Here, the barrier is not ice or altitude, but narrative, a landscape where myth and power decide who can measure and what can be known. Thousands of kilometers away, in the Arctic silence of Alaska's Brooks Range, Mount Isto stands as the highest peak in the American far north. For decades, maps disagreed about which summit claimed the title. In 2014, a team from the U.S. Geological Survey set out to settle the question, not with boots and ropes, but with airborne radar. Flying low over the tundra, their sensors mapped the landscape with pinpoint accuracy, confirming Mount Isto's height at 2,735 meters and shifting the record books without setting foot on the summit. In this frozen wilderness, where no roads penetrate and rescue is measured in days, the mountain's true stature was revealed by data alone. Here, technology has become the modern explorer, crossing distances that remain untouched by human presence. Whether guarded by politics or measured from the air, these peaks remind us that the final barriers to discovery are no longer just physical. They are written in law, in legend, and in code. Even in the era of satellite maps, real isolation endures, enforced by law, myth, or untamed wilderness. These mountains remain out of reach, their secrets intact. As boundaries tighten and wild places vanish, true inaccessibility becomes rarer